53% of Americans say there are too few American women in politics. That's the data from Pew Research Center. It came out September 2023, but it's pretty accurate to this day. What do you say? Too few? Too many? Too few Republicans? I think personally we can do with a lot less Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez types. I don't mind if those women sit on the sidelines of politics and bring in much more hard-charging conservative women who are bold and blunt in their conservative and, let's face it, even Christian ideals. I'll be happy with that. What do you say? But before we get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at washingtontimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. If you do go to Washington Times to check out Bold and Blunt, why don't you just scroll down to the bottom of the page and find the newsletter section and click on it, and you can find my newsletter, Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, and sign up for it. And you will get delivered to your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, as well as my Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcasts. And just one other quick mention, check out my latest book. It's called God-Given or Bust: Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. Let's go back to the data on women leaders. This is pertinent. This is applicable. This makes sense to discuss this topic because March is Women's History Month. So why not take a look at the data on women leaders, women in politics? Pew Center writes, Pew Research Center, as women's representation in U.S. politics has grown, 53% of Americans say there are still too few women in high political office in the United States, and many see significant obstacles for women candidates. In 2023, Pew looked at gender and political leadership and just sort of put all that data together, going back as far as the 1960s when there were like negative 0.01 women in politics. I may be exaggerating just a little bit, to 2020, right? When there are a lot more. Percentage of U.S. senators who are women are still below 30%. In modern time. At the start of the 118th Congress in 2023, there were 25 women serving in the U.S. Senate, just shy of the record 26 women senators sworn in on the first day of the previous Congress, Pew writes. Of the 25 women senators, 16 were Democrats, 9 Republicans. We need to flip that, right? We really need to work on that. It should be all Republicans, 0 Democrats, right? Because honestly, when you look at what Democrats put forth, how are they doing anything good to advance women's issues in America, which I hate that term because women's issues are usually tossed to the side as abortion, childcare, education. But look, foreign policy, economics, all that stuff that is supposedly men's issues, guess what? Are women's issues too. But it is what it is. We still have that phrase, women's issues versus political issues. We don't say men's issues. I guess it's implied that any issue that isn't a woman's issue is automatically a man's issue. But I think that we need more conservative women in politics. We need fewer women in the Democrat Party, more women whose eyes have been opened to how destructive the Democrat Party has become against all things that should be top concerns to not just women, but men too. But let's just look at it from a woman's perspective, for instance, how Democrats like to say that these are women's issues, family issues, childcare, the family finances, schools and education. How have Democrats advanced these matters in a way that help the average woman in America? All Democrats do, right? All they do is that campaign season, they run about in their districts and they talk about how bad Republicans are for women, for families, for children. And they talk about how Republicans want to take money out of the education system. And they talk about how Republicans want to put money into the military and things like that, which, by the way, is also a women's issue. In case you haven't heard, women are in the military and women do care about defending borders. But again, I'm just defaulting to, the Democrats' phrasing, women's issues. And they run around in campaign season and they talk about that, and they get their base voters all up in arms and crazy at the thought that Republicans are taking away funding that they need to put food on their table. And in the meanwhile, they promise entitlement. They promise that they're going to give more money for daycare. They're going to give more money for free college. They're going to give more money for food on your table. They're going to provide more money for schools, so your kids will have free breakfast and free lunch and free from cradle to grave. And that's what Democrats call women's issues, right? That women somehow can't provide for their own families, that they need, they require, they demand, they have to have government help and government aid and government dole-outs, which is really to say taxpayer dollars, right? The redistribution of wealth, the taking from Peter to pay Paul, the taking from the hardworking Americans to pay the entitled Americans, the ones who don't want to go to work, the ones who aren't responsible and have 18 kids by 17 different fathers, and then pretend that they are victims and the government, meaning you and me, are supposed to pay for them from cradle to grave. Well, they go around and they promise, oh yes, we got your back, those Republicans, vote for me and I will give you a free Obama phone, right? Remember that famous video? Obama phone, he's going to give me a phone. I got the Obama phone and Obama's going to do this. Really? That's the rhetoric coming from the Democrats, right? That's the rhetoric coming from the Democrats toward women's issues, pretending as if this is what matters to most women in America. And sadly, that's what the Democrat Party has become to women, right? The sort of trough where they can dig their hands in and scoop up as much freebies as they can. But I started on this rabbit trail because I was saying we need to flip that number. 16 of 25 women senators a couple years ago were Democrats. Only 9 were Republicans. The reason for that is because the Democrats have sort of fostered this culture among their ranks, among their voting bases, to look to government to provide for all. And when you have women running for political offices in the Democrat Party, they so frequently are the voices of the giveaways for families, for women, for children. Taking Peter to pay Paul, right? Taking money from me and you and me to pay those who don't want to work or those who have more children than they can responsibly provide for. And this is sort of the rhetoric that has become the Democrat Party. Back to this Pew Research Center survey, 22 are white. These are of the 25 women senators. 22 are white, 2 Asian American, and 1 is Hispanic. And you know what? Guess what? I could care less about the skin color of my senators. Really, just uphold the Constitution. Just do what you take an oath in office to do, and we'll be fine. You can be black, white, Asian, whatever. I just don't care. I really don't even care if you're a woman or a man either, but seeing as this is Women's History Month, it just seems applicable to talk about women in politics. Of the women who were representatives on the House side sworn in this first session of the 118th Congress, 91 were Democrats and 33 were Republicans. So there were 124 total, right? That is just under 29% of the House of Representatives chamber voting membership, right? So about 29% in the 118th Congress were women, 124 women. Of that, 91 were Democrats, 33 Republicans. Come on. Come on, conservative women of America, run for political office. Better yet, win political office. We really need to push back on the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, right? She's young, she's energetic, she's got years and years to go in office. She's not going away anytime soon. We need some loud and proud and bold conservative women to nullify all that she says. Which really, honestly, if she didn't have the media on her side, right, scooping up every inane remark she makes, she really wouldn't be hard to push back on at all, because nothing she says makes sense. It's just coming right from the World Economic Forum bullet points, right? I mean, it's one step above Joe Biden reading his stage directions. Anyhow, 26 of the 124 women serving in the 118th Congress were Black, 18 Hispanic, 7 Asian American, 2 Native American, and 1 is multiracial. How interesting. So, turning to the Center for American Women and Politics, they summarize a little bit more concisely. There's been 1 female vice president. We all know this, Kamala Harris. She was also the first woman of color, CAWP says, the first Black person, and the first South Asian person elected to this office. First person whose hair was below her shoulders. First person to be able to draw Venn circles. First person who had a laugh like a crow. First person, see how you can go on and on with the first, right? But let's just say that she was the first and only woman to hold the position of vice president, right? That's historic. Then you've got 26 women in the U.S. Senate. 125 women in the House, 4 U.S. delegates, the non-voting members, right? Non-voting members, but included in the tally. 12 governors, again, leaning heavily on the Democrats, right? 8 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Lieutenant governors, you've got 22 women as lieutenant governors. 14 Democrats, 8 Republican. Other statewide elective executive officers, you've got 61 as women. That was a little bit more evenly split. 30 Democrats, 29 Republicans, and 2 NP, I guess that means non-political or no party. Makes more sense for it to be no party since they're serving in political office. How can they be non-political? Anyhow, in state legislatures around the nation, you have 2,469 women serving. That is 33.4% of 7,386 seats. Of that, 1,580 are Democrats, 867 are Republicans, and then there's some independents and NP in there. Again, Democrats kicking butt, kicking Republican butt. Mayors in cities with population over 30,000 people, there are 428 female mayors. That is about 25.4%, CAWP finds. It is 428 of 1,686 mayoral, how do you say that? MAYORAL, mayor seats. Mayors in 100 of the most populous cities. There are 36 female mayors, 36 of 100 seats. 36 females, the rest of the 100 seats filled by males. And municipal office holders in cities over 10,000 people, cities with populations more than 10,000, 32.4% of these municipal office holders are women. Why do we care? Well, it's interesting, right? Data, stats, statistics, facts, demographics. It's always interesting. It's interesting, too, not just from a data perspective, but it's interesting as earmarkers to how far we've come in America, because it certainly has been a changing of time. when we started out in this nation with women not allowed to vote, and now we have X amount serving in high political offices, right? So it is certainly something to take note of and to even, in some instances, be proud of, such as my guest today, Lisa McClain. She is the highest ranking woman in House Republican leadership. So that in itself is a feat. She's the chair of the GOP House Conference, and she is a congresswoman from Michigan representing the 9th District. Lisa McClain, Congresswoman Lisa McClain, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is great to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So there's so much activity going on Capitol Hill. So I thought I'd start because you, as your position, chair of the GOP House Conference, you probably hear a lot that flies under the radar of the media and the American people's ears. I wanted to know, is there anything going on in the Republican Party right now that we're not hearing about that's being overshadowed that you think we should know is behind the scenes happening?
Well, I think what you really see behind the scenes is a lot of work is being done on the committee side right now, to get the reconciliation process done, to get the Trump, tax cuts permanent. There's a lot of honestly hard work being done behind the scenes, but for the most part, I think people are on the right track, right? Our agenda is to replace basically nonsense with common sense. And you see that weaved in almost every committee and almost every area, whether it's the Farm Bill to the, to Ways and Means, to Education and Workforce, to VA. It's just, we're running 90 miles an hour.
Yeah. And from my perspective, and I've been writing and talking about this for a long time, really since Barack Obama days, the Democrat Party has gone off the deep end. They're really the lunatic fringe. But I understand that in Congress, it may be different. Is there anything optimistic that you can say about working with Democrats? Is it still possible?
Well, I think, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I think if you get the cameras out of the way, you have some moderate Democrats that think their party has lost their way. No, there's no question about that.
Okay.
And I know I can share with you from my state, if you get the cameras and the news media out of the way, there are issues that Democrats want to work with us on. For example, veteran issues. Great Lakes water issues, right? That's pertinent to my state. They're just kind of afraid to do it right now because of how volatile and everything their base is. But if you could get that out of the way, there's a lot of Democrats that are really into the common sense legislation. It's just tough for them to verbalize that and put their name on it right now.
That's what I had hoped you would say. So with that, though, do you think that the cameras can get out of the way enough for these moderate Democrats to actually course correct their party?
I'm hopeful because to get lasting change, the American people are with us. That is obvious. 77 million people spoke, and they truly gave us a mandate to get back to common sense legislation, rule of law. There is a right and wrong, and there is a good path. The economy is important. Closing our borders is important. And the Republicans have the right message right now. And a lot of the moderates, I believe, know that. Look at how they flip-flopped, for example, on the border, right? Look at 2 years ago, everybody thought, Biden having an open border policy was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But now you see some of them coming a little bit to the middle on, well, maybe that's not the best thing to let 10 million people, undocumented, illegal people come into our country. And they're beginning to change their tune. Now there's still a bulk of them out there that aren't, but we are going to continue to have a positive message, move forward for the American people on common sense legislation.
And you're quite right. The American people did give the mandate not just to Trump, but the whole Trump agenda, because, of course, the House and Senate went Republican as well. When you look at what's taking place with the pushback against Donald Trump, not just in the Democrat Party, not just with the voices of the Democrat Party in the streets throwing Molotov cocktails and so forth, but in the court system, does that surprise you at all?
I think to the level of violence, it does surprise me a little bit. I thought they would have learned their lesson, but clearly they haven't. Fortunate, it's sad that it's not the policies that the Democrats care about. It's the personality. They are truly a personality-based party. And all you need to do is they never talk about the policies. They only talk about the person, the person, whether it's Elon Musk or Donald Trump. Remember, everybody thought the Tesla automobile was great because it was Green New Deal and it was, electric and it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But oh my gosh, now Elon Musk is a Republican. Let's throw Molotov cocktails at the dealerships and let's burn the cars. I mean, you're kidding me, right? This isn't happening in America? And the answer is yes. The policy is the same. The car is still an electric car, last I checked. It's just they don't like the person. And I say this in cheek, but it's true. The Democrats are so deranged in their personality-based policies that Donald Trump could have the cure for cancer and they would find something the matter with it.
I got to agree with you, and it's very disheartening to see, and which is why, I like to speak to congressional members because I hope that they can give me inside information that, it's really not that bad. The media is overhyping the chaos, but it sort of isn't being overhyped, is it?
No, I mean, not from that perspective. I mean, they flat out just lie. I mean, look at what they have to do. They have to fearmonger. They have to get everybody all ginned up to think that we're doing something wrong, whether it's, oh my gosh, we're going to take away Social Security. Well, we're the ones that voted for the CR. We're the ones that voted to make sure that Social Security still got paid, that Medicare and Medicaid benefits still got paid, that WIC still happened, that our soldiers still a pay raise for junior enlisted. Remember, the Democrats voted every one of them, except for one, voted against that. Yet you listen to them in the media, fearmonger, and it's all our fault. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's the CR. It doesn't matter if it's the budget resolution. It doesn't matter if it's the Department of Education. They have to scare people with their fearmongering because they know they can't beat us on the truth. They can't have a policy debate. They have to personalize it. That's why I know we're doing the right thing.
And even when it's a policy that seems like a no-brainer unifier, like DOGE, like cleaning up waste and fraud and corrupt spending in government, it's hard to see that the left, whether they're in politics or in the media, are supportive of anything Elon Musk and Donald Trump and his team are trying to do in terms of saving waste.
Cheryl, I think it even goes a step further. They're advocating for the waste, the fraud, the abuse to continue.
I know.
Right? I mean, God forbid we look at it and we uncover it. They're like, no. We got to keep this waste, fraud, and abuse going. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Okay, so you hail from a state that gave us Governor Whitmer during the coronavirus, and
don't hold that against me.
No, I don't. But it gives rise to the question of when you return home and you talk to your constituents, where do they fall on the scale of sanity? Are they still, on the Governor Whitmer supporting side, or do they see the sense of Donald Trump agendas and policies and they're coming more Republican?
They see very clearly that Donald Trump's policies are working because the people that I represent, basically, they want to go to work, get a fair wage, and they want the government to get out of the way. They don't want the government to tell them what to do, what to drive, what kind of stove to have. They don't want to be overregulated or overtaxed. And President Trump's policies and his agenda of America first and bringing manufacturing back and closing the borders and not having biological men in women's sports, they get those common sense ideas. They also like the fact that gas is down, that the price of eggs are down, that interest rates are coming down on mortgages. They like the economic policy because they can touch it and feel it and see it. So, we have our far left people too, but I don't think there's any rehabilitation for those people. But the bulk of the people, I think, really appreciate President Trump and what they're doing for their families.
So what are you hearing, and what would be your role in particular about the fate of the Department of Education? So Linda McMahon and Donald Trump are on the same path as that, and I know that there's been paperwork signed supposedly to start the dismantling of the agency, but where does Congress step in for that, and what do you predict?
I think Congress will take a good, long, hard look at it, and here's why. For years, the Department of Education's budget has gone up and up and up. And I happen to sit on the Education and Workforce Committee, and every year they say, if you just give us more money, we'll fix the problem. Well, every year they get more money, and every year we have a worse result than we had the prior year. Test scores are down. Math and reading scores are down. So what is the return on our money, on our most precious investment? And there isn't one. It's a negative return. So I welcome the opportunity to take a look at how we better utilize those taxpayer dollars to actually help the children. So if we got rid of the bloated bureaucracy and just gave the money, let's just say we froze the Department of Education's funding, okay? And we just gave that money to the students. What do you think we could do with that? You think maybe we could hire some more tutors, maybe for math? Maybe we could give more people school lunches. Maybe we could help more special needs children and provide more services for them if we gave the money to the children as opposed to the bloated administration and the bloated bureaucrats. I'd like to try that because what we're doing right now isn't working.
It really is common sense what you just outlined. If it truly is for the children, as Democrats always like to proclaim, it's a no-brainer what to do there. And I think Democrats are going to kick and scream the whole way, but you made a reference a few minutes ago that there is room for unity on some issues. Democrats and Republicans joined it together, and one such area you said was VA, the Veterans of Administration. What particularly do you see coming out insofar as VA reforms that Democrats may actually embrace?
Well, I take a look at, for example, I'll give you the VA hospital, the John Dingell VA hospital. Debbie Dingell is a Democrat on the other side of the aisle. She cares a lot about veterans, as I do. What can we do to improve the quality of care for our veterans? She's very passionate about that. And I think we need to take a good long look at how those resources are being used and how those resources are being spent. For example, we can do a lot better for our veterans than we're doing right now. If you take a look at getting veterans back into the programs to get veterans back into the workforce as they transition, from the military back into the private sector. Housing for veterans, I think, is another very important piece of legislation that we can work on together. And I do think there's an appetite for that.
And just wrapping up with a couple more questions. You are the highest ranking woman in House Republican leadership, and here we are at Women's History Month, and I just wondered if you had any special campaigns planned or anything going on.
We absolutely do. We're going to the White House to celebrate Women's History Month. I think that's extremely important. But me personally, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get more women, especially young women, involved in politics. I think we bring a very unique way of looking at things. And it's up to me, and it's incumbent upon me to find more people and recruit more people to get involved, whether it be in official offices or involved at the local level, to get people interested. And people want to see, I think people would like to see people who look like them. It's easier for me to recruit. If it's like, yeah, I get it, you can do it. You know, I've done it, you can do it too. So I'm very excited about the opportunities that we have. We have a very diverse caucus to highlight our women members a lot more.
Yes, and we need more young women to counter Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I noticed going on your congressional page, you are part of the Albanian caucus. Are you Albanian?
I am not.
Oh,
we
okay.
have a lot of my constituents are Albanian, and they're very, very important part of our community. So I try and represent them as best I can.
Very cool. Well, I'm part Albanian, so that's why I noticed it right off. So
there you go.
Congresswoman Lisa McClain, it was wonderful having you on Bold and Blunt. Thank you so much, and thank you for your service to the nation in politics.
Thank you. Enjoy the day.
You too. And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time, and meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt.